Every person on Earth has a story. A unique story. Stories with joy and happiness. Struggles and failures. And the crazy twists and turns. This is real life. Picture this. One episode, we're sitting down with Jared Folsom, a man who turned his life around from a stint in prison to becoming a millionaire. Another time, we're hearing from a 28-year-old cancer survivor who's conquered childhood adversity. These are the stories that resonate. Tales of triumph over adversity and insights that can inspire us all. Our passion is simple: to enrich lives and spark that fire within you to take that next step in your personal growth. We believe in the power of real stories to create genuine inspiration. Welcome to Real Life with Patrick Clark.
Hey everybody, Patrick Clark here. Real Life Podcast. Doing another episode here. I got my buddy Jack here with me today, and Jack has seen some stuff. I say that's kind of what this Real Life Podcast is all about. So we're here to talk about real people and real life and the goods and bads, because life has its ups and downs, and I know that this guy's had some ups and downs. And he has actually been a part of some of my ups and downs, totally by accident. And so I guess maybe I'll kind of start with that. I haven't known Jack that long, about a year. It's been a year. How about them apples?
Man, it's been a year.
Yeah, it's been a year.
It's been a whole year. Yeah.
So
No doubt.
I met Jack and his dad, and your uncle too, I guess, but really more you and your dad, when I guess the early January or February, something like that, that I brought my truck into you.
Old Red.
Yeah, old red, man.
Yeah.
The problem child. 2018 F-150, great truck, right? Great transmission, great engine. The F-150, best-selling truck on the road. One of the most reliable. Next to a Toyota, I'll give it that. It is what it is.
You can live with a Toyota.
So, that timing collided with Noah getting sick, and of course, just a treasure trove of issues that we have. But we had a lot of complications with that engine. And if you live in Flagstaff, and I'm kind of taking over here on the front end of this podcast, but
you're fine.
if you are a Flagstaffian,
I'm going to go with Flagstaffian.
Okay.
I am a native Flagstaffian,
Okay.
so I'm going to go ahead and
Okay, you're going to coin that one
here. Yeah, Flagstaffian.
All right. So Jack and his dad and his uncle own Flagstaff 4x4 right there next to Miss Zips, and I had gone to another company with my truck woes, and I, just for full disclosure, I had only had the truck a little over a year when we kind of started going through all this, and the other shop had kind of like, just get rid of it, buy a Toyota, you'll be fine. And I'm like, do you guys understand like my position in this? The engine's shot, the transmission's shot. I'll be upside down. I'll be paying money on a truck I don't owe.
And by the way, don't you make money fixing cars?
Well, yeah. And to them, it wasn't worth it. And I guess maybe in hindsight,
maybe they had the right idea in hindsight, but yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, they didn't indulge my analytical nature. And of course, your dad's, I think he's an analytical to a hilt.
He's an analytical guy. And same here,
Yeah,
I think that's a shared quality.
They kind of helped me understand what my real options were, and ended up we could get a remanufactured engine. They ran right for 10 minutes and then wasn't running right anymore. So that parlayed into just a ton of issues, and Jack and
a lot of lessons learned there.
Sure. You guys and us too, you know. But I have to tell you, the way you guys conducted yourselves and trying to make sure that I understood what was going on, you stepped way out of your way for us, and
I don't think we did. What I say all the time is like, Well, this is a common principle. If you're an expert in something, you should be able to explain it on all 5 of those difficulty levels that they talk about.
Okay.
Like to a 5-year-old, you should be able to explain it to a 5-year-old, to a teenager, to a grown adult layman, to somebody who's like an amateur, and then to a professional. You should be able to explain the same concept at all 5 levels. And if you can't, there's a breakdown of your knowledge of it. So if I can explain it to a 5-year-old, I can explain it to you. So I take that approach when any customers...
So what are you saying?
Well, I say everybody's got to start at some level of knowledge, and I got to assume, a lot of the time, maybe. But no, the practical implication there is that if people want to know, a lot of times you start talking to people about their cars and their eyes glaze over and they say, what do I need to write the check for and when is it going to be done? And that's all they care about. But to the people who want to understand what's going on and are a little more analytical, want to understand a little bit better, it's not rocket science. It's actually a lot of very basic principles of, high school physics. And as electronics get more complicated, it gets harder. But if we're doing our job right, we should be able to explain it to anybody who wants to know, because it's simple. Our processes are pretty simple. I can think about it pretty basically, so I should be able to explain it pretty basically. And you weren't a difficult person to explain to. You've got a really good head on your shoulder, so it didn't take long. Yeah, it's still there.
Sometimes I wonder.
It's still there. But no, it didn't take long. So yeah, it was easier than a lot of other interactions I've had to have where I'm trying to explain to somebody, old Grandma Betty about why she needs to leave her vehicle with me because otherwise her brakes are going to fail. And, what do you mean? I've been driving it around this whole time. And sometimes it can be like pulling teeth. But, man, that whole thing was a two-way street with your truck, as much of a nightmare as it ended up being. So.
Well, no, we sure do appreciate you guys doing what you did. And throughout the process, I think one of the things that kind of helped you help us was a level of understanding of the difficulty that not only it is anytime you're having car problems, that is frustrating enough. And then you kind of pile on the other stuff going on, and that is tough. And I think people that have not really related or can't relate because they haven't gone through something like that, they can be empathetic,
sure,
right? And understanding and helpful,
right? Or sympathetic but not empathetic. They can try and conceptualize what you're going through, but they can't feel it because they've never really experienced a facsimile. So
yeah, and I think it kind of worked out for many different reasons that we wound up kind of coming to you for a second opinion, and then ultimately, even though things did go wrong,
like as wrong as they could go.
Yeah, well, I mean, your dad said that, I think old Red's kind of the poster child for, the plethora of problems that we had. But
yeah, it really was.
Yeah, well,
really was.
And I told him I was going to make a poster. We'll talk about that later because it's not really appropriate for kids.
Fair enough.
Well, it might be, but we'll just leave that alone. But and that's kind of why I thought it would be cool to have you here. So for those of you that don't know, our family's been through a pretty tough season of life. We've got a couple kids now with chronic illnesses, but my oldest son, Noah, who's 13, suffers from long COVID postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And when I met Jack, we were in the very beginnings of these issues that actually he hadn't hit yet. And then right as the truck problems really got worse, so did Noah. We were trying to take the truck to Colorado, and I kept having to pull over to cool it down and thermostat, but the reason why I think you guys understood what we were going through is because at his age, you were going through something arguably, I mean, I don't even you can compare it, but
I try not to compare, but
more life-threatening.
It allowed
for sure.
me. So I was diagnosed with cancer when I was 12. So I did a year and a half kind of chemotherapy in and out of the Phoenix Children's Hospital. We went to the same hospital as Noah was going to, and I was able to empathize. I was able to put myself in your situation and say, yeah, I get it. This has just got to be made right, and we've got to do everything that we can, because if we don't, we're creating problems that don't need to be created, and that just turned my stomach, because again, I could really put myself in your shoes. So it definitely did help. I mean, that whole experience with me, and I know my dad too, because he obviously went through that. If you have a kid who's got
went through it as a parent, right?
with a chronic illness, a lot of people would say and argue, I would tend to agree, that stuff might affect parents more than it affects the kids in the long run. Kids are pretty resilient. I even, to this day, I'm 28 now, so I'm pretty removed from it, but I don't think of it as like a huge deal anymore. And my mom, on the other hand, she's got like some mild PTSD over the whole thing. Anytime anything happens or anybody's got to go to the doctor for something potentially serious in our family, her blood pressure comes up, and it's like, man, I think that affected her more. But anyway, back to your point of what you were saying, was that the ability to empathize with the adverse situation of another human being kind of helps you realize, like, maybe my obligation stops here, but where's my moral? My professional obligation might stop here, but my moral obligation might be somewhere else. And I think that's what allowed us to just kind of say, no, we need to make this right. We kind of decided early on, it's like, this is not going to be a money making endeavor anymore. we're just going to make the truck right for the customer and give it back to them and get them down the road. And there was a lot of things that made that easy. But yeah, I think you kind of explaining to us, like, hey, this is our reality right now, and I kind of need your guys' help as best you can, and it makes it a lot easier, and it's different. It's a different relationship.
Oh, certainly so. Yeah, I mean, definitely have kindled a friendship for sure.
Yeah, you didn't introduce me as your mechanic.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, did I? Is that what I did?
No,
well,
you said friend.
Friend.
Yeah,
oh,
that's
well,
what I said.
I see what you're saying.
You didn't introduce me as your mechanic. It's a different relationship now because we've kind of garnered that beyond professional respect. I just think you're a cool guy who's
likewise,
all that. So.
Yeah. Well, and so let's talk about that cancer experience. I know that because obviously that you've gone through it, and you say it's kind of water off a duck's back kind of thing.
Yeah, a little bit.
But at the same time, when my wife and I were at the shop getting the van checked out, you were sharing some things, kind of about post-cancer changes.
Totally.
Like so walk us through, if you can, the experience as a child.
Yep.
And then, fast forward to, you did a surgery, kind of not sure that it was
Pretty
the right
recently,
surgery to do. Yeah. And then kind of, and then of course at the end, my favorite thing to do is ask for advice,
Yeah.
So we'll get to that. But
Perfect.
Can you walk us through kind of, okay, what were the symptoms? How did you find out? How did you treat it? How did you feel? The whole thing.
Luckily, I've had 15 plus years to think about it, so I've got a condensed version of the story.
Beautiful.
So that'll be
because obviously
easy.
I can't stop talking about it.
So I was 12. I was jumping on the trampoline. I felt a pretty sharp shooting pain in my chest. Just kind of thought I maybe strained it, pulled something, did something weird, just kind of went in for the rest of the day. Later on, the next day, we were in church. It was kind of hot. Started having some breathing problems where like I couldn't take a deep breath without getting that real sharp pain in my chest. So went to the ER. They found with a CT scan that there was a solid mass in my chest, which looked like it could have been maybe a bruise. CT scan, it's not bleeding, so it's not a bruise. You guys need to go to Phoenix Children's Hospital tonight because it's a solid mass in your chest and we don't know what it is. It was about the size of an egg, and we went down to Phoenix Children's. I got my first IV ever in my whole life at 3 a.m. in Phoenix Children's Hospital. I was there for I think I was probably like 5 to 7 days actually in the hospital while they were running tests and doing all kinds of stuff. It came back eventually after a couple of diagnoses, which I'm sure you're kind of your experience with that sort of thing. Oh, it's this. Oh, no, maybe it's that.
Yeah.
They came up with a diagnosis of undifferentiated sarcoma. Crash course in that. A sarcoma can be 6 different kinds of tissues. I don't remember what they all are, but heart, lung, muscle, those sorts of things. This one was made mostly of stem cells, and the ways that doctors described this to a 13-year-old was the tumor really didn't decide what it wanted to be when it grew up. And I was like, makes sense. It's not heart, it's not lung, whatever. The unfortunate consequence of that was that I had to undergo all 3 treatments for all 6 sarcomas. So basically all of the 6 different sarcomas are encompassed by these 3 different chemotherapy treatments, and they had to hit me with all 3 of them.
Good Lord.
So it was a 39 weeks of actual on the clock chemo, and it went on over the course of about a year and a half. There was kind of a whole bunch of oddities about that. There was a medication that I took a lifetime dose of. So they actually say that if I get cancer again, I can't take that medication because I've already taken my lifetime dose of it, which to me is kind of crazy because that means some effect of that medication is going to stick with me for like the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I had to carry around a backpack that was attached to an IV all the time. My dad and I went to a baseball game with that thing one time, and that was pretty neat, like a baby-sized package of just fluid. And after all of that, back up a little bit. They took the tumor out before they started chemo, and to do that, they had to take 3 sections of rib out, 2 3-inch sections and a 1/4-inch sections, shave a little bit of my sternum off, like right around here. The surgery you were just talking about, that happened when I was 26, so like two years ago, right before I fell off my mom's insurance. I had them go in and put 2 replacement ribs. I call them my extra clavicles because they run the same line as my collarbone, but they're just like extra little straps that look like plumber's tape, if you know what that is. It literally, the x-ray looks like they took a piece of plumber's tape across 2 things and screwed them into me. So I'm left with some of the pain from that, like pretty much constantly, I guess. It's just uncomfortable having hardware that doesn't move with the rest of your body kind of in your torso, I think, especially because like you fall or do something and it never moves with everything else. But so as a kid, the biggest effect that it had on me, I think, was the social isolation. Because when you're immunocompromised, you can't go to public school. I've been to public school my whole life. This was my 8th grade year. Can't go hang out with your friends. Can't go to the mall or movies or whatever. Like, you literally kind of have to sit in a clean bubble all the time. So that was the biggest thing that I think worked on me when I was 13 years old, other than the fact that it's just physically a lot of discomfort and displeasure to go through. But that stuff, it actually kind of helped me now. Like when I get sick now, I'm better able to deal with some of that stuff, that physical discomfort, because it hardened me to it. But in the moment, it was, again, probably the social isolation over anything else. And, that's kind of just, it goes away. I went back to school, bald as a cue ball my freshman year. I didn't care. I wanted to go back. So that was pretty easy to alleviate. And then for a long time, I kind of just didn't think of it much at all. Like, it didn't really affect me that much. The biggest impact that it has had on my life post being actually sick and post-treatment was I found out that I'm chemically infertile as a result of the treatment because of when it was happening and the puberty timeline and everything like that. I'll never be able to have biological kids of my own. And that was like a big part of my plan. And I was married at the time that I found this out, and it was a big part of my ex-wife's plan. Spoiler alert. But no, so I wonder to what extent that played a part in all of that. So that I think is the biggest thing I've had to kind of work through post being sick. And you can't even really say for sure that that's why people have fertility issues all the time, but it's kind of one of those things, the simplest explanation is usually the right one.
The dots are kind of starting to
connect.
So
it just, that's probably the biggest thing. But other than that, I don't have any, I would say trauma over it. Like if somebody, the example I always use is if somebody told me today, like, hey, you have lung cancer or whatever, and you're gonna have to go through treatment again. I wouldn't have a, post-traumatic stress response. I would kind of just be like, well, I guess I've done it already. I mean, it's not, I don't have that sort of visceral emotional baggage attached to it. Right. It's been more of that other stuff personally, recently anyway. So.
Okay. And so, obviously, a marriage has not worked out. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, it happens about half the time is what they tell me. So.
Apparently, So, and I had no idea about the infertility. That's tough.
Dropping some bombs on you.
Yeah, no kidding.
Sorry.
I guess you and I can coexist in an infertile environment now.
Yeah, right.
And it. yeah, those of you that can read between the lines, go for it. But the blessing of children is definitely one not to be marginalized, and I certainly know that I wanted children, and although I didn't plan on having a basketball team,
Sure.
They say happy wife, happy life. And
Yep.
Jenny, I know you're going to kill me for that, but I got to get my digs in, because now she's not here to slap me, so I might as well just
and I'll tell
float
you,
one out there.
whatever she thinks, it's true. Happy wife, happy life.
But at the same time, it takes two to tango. But the kids have been a blessing, and there's of course other ways to be a father.
Totally. I've got 2 great nephews. My oldest sister has 2 kids that are 4 and almost 2 respectively. I absolutely love hanging out with them. It's kind of made me be, I can kind of be the fun uncle.
Yeah.
I'm finding out ways that it dovetails with my personality, because I really like to travel, and kids take a lot of that out of your early years, at least. I mean, my parents have had a lot of kids and been able to travel in their later years, but you don't have as much energy to do stuff then.
Sure.
So if I can go, my mom and dad would never go try and snowboard in Canada, right? They're going for the whining and dining kind of places, but I can do some of that other stuff. I've looked at, I've thought about trying to make a push for the 7 summits. You ever heard of that?
No.
There's the 7 highest mountains on each continent.
Oh, like hiking them?
Yeah, like summiting. Yeah, it's
Wow,
the 7
okay.
summits. Yeah, so Everest is obviously one of those. But
Wow.
I wouldn't even be able to conceptualize those things if I had kids, right? So different paths and it's kind of hard to judge at any given point in your life. You can't impart previous wisdom onto yourself now. That was confusing, but I'm trying to take
that's
the
a
long
fancy
view.
way of saying hindsight's 20/20.
Hindsight's 20/20, and you can't have it now. You don't get it now. So I'm trying to kind of think forward about that kind of stuff in a more positive light, because it's really easy to go the other way.
Sure.
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who just despair over it and don't ever do anything. But I say, okay, this is going to present me with some opportunities I wouldn't have otherwise had, and I just need to take that and run with it. So.
Yeah. Lemons and lemonade. Noah and I, talked about that, and of course, as COVID was coming along, we were going through that. We had that conversation about, and my wife had a larger fear of it than I did.
Sure.
And she was pregnant, during the pandemic.
Yeah, that's scary.
What was Naomi, a pandy baby? Just kidding. Hardly. But there obviously are psychological effects that all of us experienced through that.
Sure.
And as Noah, never realizing that conversation, and I remember this conversation with him about the lemons and lemonade kind of thing, and saying, hey dude, sometimes life's gonna poop all over you, and you're gonna have to figure out what you're gonna do about that, not really realizing that it's getting him down pretty hard.
Yeah.
And he's definitely had these moments where he's I can't take it anymore. But it took him so long to get there. And I think I really relate to that comment that you made about your mom, because Jenny and I, and maybe me more than Jenny, I'm kind of the chick in the marriage, if you will, from an emotional perspective.
Sure, fair enough.
But I definitely have had these moments of just visceral emotional responses.
Yeah.
Anger, resentment,
Fear.
Fear. Fear. Because at one point we didn't know what was going on and if his life was in danger. And I think that's where you just go super sensitive, ultra fight or flight, you know. And
that's the belly of the beast with that stress response. And I've kind of talked with that at length with my mom about it, and she said it was the fear. It was the few days and few hours and times when we didn't know what was going to happen or how it was likely to turn out, because doctors, as wonderful as they are, they're not typically the best communicators a lot of the time.
Yeah, sometimes they're just just too frank.
Yeah. Or they're too they won't say anything because they're afraid of saying the wrong thing. There's this whole liability culture thing where nobody wants to say the wrong thing, so better say nothing, and then parents end up having to like pry information out of people. And I think that's even
frustrating too.
Totally. And I mean, you have to go into mama or papa bear mode and really to make stuff happen. But the communication, the lack of communication is where the fear comes from, and the fear is where all that other nasty bubbling up of the stress and the anxiety kind of comes from, if I understand it. But
totally. I will say that as a parent, there is no bigger fear than that you feel than the livelihood,
well-being,
the life, the well-being. Yeah, that's the right phrase. Of your kid,
right.
And there's there's also this moment where you go, like, how like, is this forever?
Right.
And for you, I mean, there's always, for your mom and your dad, going to, I would bet, and I bet you if you ask her, she would say this, like, there's a looming edge. Because
totally.
Cancer comes back, right?
Totally.
I mean, and I'm not trying to scare you or
so to your point, it would probably, that reality scares my mom probably more than it actually scares me.
Correct,
the
right.
doctors tell me, there's less than a 5% chance of recurrence of that exact cancer coming back, and I'm like, cool, that just puts me kind of a little bit above everybody else, right? Because if you've already had cancer, you've got a higher probability of getting it again, and I'm just like, those dice are not in my hands.
Right.
So I don't think of it. I don't have that stress response. But I bet, again, you're right. If you ask my mom, she would say, yeah, I do think about that. I do worry about it.
Well, sure. So, and it's because, you're her son, and, kind of going down the faith route here a little bit. Somebody said something to me that has assisted in, like, course correcting me through that. And
sure.
it's that, although, our kids are our kids, right? They're our blood, they're created as from a portion of us physically. We're still, brother and sister in Christ. And
sure.
we have been charged with the responsibility of raising these brothers and sisters of ours, but they're not ours, right?
Not in the ultimate sense.
Ultimately, they're not, right?
Right.
They're his,
right?
And to me, that's where psychologically I've had to peel back and say, yes, he's my son in the flesh, but he's your son spiritually, right? And because I have a responsibility for keeping that spirituality and that closeness alive, I have to get out of the way of that and allow that. And correctly.
As one of my friends says a lot, if he's
100%.
there, just give it to God, and you got to kind of step back.
Well, and that's a control thing. The Bible talks about worry, worry not, right?
Worry not. Do you see that the flowers of the field worry for, that's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite verses in the Bible.
And I think for me, and actually Nisreen was just here doing her podcast, and we were talking about worry, and we didn't say worry specifically, but it was something that we talked about,
sure.
where it was, you've got to just live today.
Right now.
And I think anytime there's these types of things that we've had experience with, today becomes a lot more important.
Oh my gosh! Well, here's a bumper sticker for that. Don't sweat the little things. You take for granted less of the stuff that you get to experience. So like a sunny day, people use that as an example all the time, but man, being able to go outside, being able to walk around, being able to kind of experience life in any way that you're able to is a blessing. And I think a lot of people, especially in today's society, take a lot for granted. When you're forced to face mortality, either your own or someone that you love, it kind of brings everything back down to to the initial conditions, if you will. Like everybody kind of, it brings you back to earth. As they say, down to earth, it brings you right back down to earth when you have to face those sorts of things. And it makes it, as hard as it is when it happens, it makes it, I think, in the long run, it makes it easier for you to fight that fight. I mean, just constantly try and course correct. I'll use your term to say, okay, I got to keep myself humble. Don't get a big head about it. Try and just live your life honestly and do the right thing and be good today. Don't worry about yesterday or tomorrow. Like you said, be really in the moment. Appreciate what you have and do the best with it. Try to make the world a better place.
It's the live your best life, those real cliche
bumper stickers.
things.
That's what I call them.
Yeah. And
they're always right.
It's simple and it's true, and it's so simple. I think that sometimes it just gets more or less ignored.
Totally.
And each podcast that I talk about why we do this, and it's these moments where the listener or the watcher, wherever you're consuming this, takes part of this conversation and can relate to it, or relates to it in a way that it does a course correction. It's like, okay, I'm being a little too bitter, or I'm being a little too entitled.
Or maybe it just turns the wheels in that direction.
Right.
Sometimes thoughts and kind of how your thoughts and your emotions have interplay. It's kind of like steering a battleship. Like, hopefully this will just be one piece of something for somebody to say, oh yeah, no, I remember that, and I need to be a little more empathetic. I need to maybe go beyond my professional obligations, see this person as a human being, and go a little bit of the extra mile because I can. And yeah, you're right. Like a little bit of a different perspective. It just impart that little extra evidence to act on people's minds to say, how can I be better as a person, as a human being?
Yeah.
So.
Way to wrap that back into the front of the podcast. Very nice. Well done. So tell me a little bit about what you do now. I mean, so you had a surgery. You're running the shop. You've got some plans, I'm sure. You got some goals. You talk about 7 summits. There's some dreams and some fun things to consider.
Yeah.
I think I said it right that you are a co-owner of the shop, correct?
So technically on paper right now I'm not.
Okay.
But the ultimate plan is I am the successor to that whole business and the property and everything like that. So in effect and in all practicality, I could be an owner tomorrow because there's kind of I'll say like a little horse trading kind of a side deal going on where I am actively accumulating that ownership right now, but I don't have any of it on paper. I actually prefer that. At the moment, is that it makes taxes a lot easier
and liability.
Taxes and that kind of stuff is a little easier. So, and I'm not worried about it because it's my dad and my uncle, and I just I'm not. I know I got what's coming to me, kind of a thing. Right now, my plans. I'll be honest. My future is a little bit hard for me to think about a lot. I'm still kind of going through, I would say, the throes of getting divorced. I really thought I was done with that. And I guess having a romantic partner is like a big, it was for a long time anyway, a big part of my happiness. We were together for 6 years, married for a little over a year. So I'm still trying to figure out how to navigate that because she was such a big part of my future that now it feels like there's a big hole there. So as much as the shop is a big chunk of what I have left, that's kind of, it's a good thing. That's kind of my lighthouse. It's like, well, if nothing else goes right, this is going okay. I can divert a lot of energy into this. I'm good at it. I don't hate it. I won't say it's like a dream job, but I think 1 in 10 people get to have their dream job if we're lucky. But I don't hate it. I don't wake up in the morning and say, I've got to go to work. So my future right now is get through this year and see how I feel next year and see what's changed next year. I've tried to kind of bury myself in my hobbies, snowboarding and video games and stuff like that. So I'm leaving it open, I guess I'll say. I'm trying not to lock on to anything. I've looked at some of the stuff like 7 summits. I think I need a vacation is honestly my next thing. I'm trying to go to Marseille, France, because the Mediterranean is one of the few bodies of water that I've never actually touched.
Okay.
So I want to go there and do that, hang out in the Mediterranean for a couple weeks, and just kind of keep my head down and appreciate stuff. Just learn to appreciate stuff by myself and as an individual, as opposed to as a husband, if you will.
Right.
But,
yeah. I think there's certainly I know that I have a bit of a codependent nature.
Sure. Anybody who's in a relationship could it's really easy thought experiment. Imagine you didn't have that person anymore. You woke up the next day and that was the last conversation you ever had with them. Wow. That puts a lot, that's all you have to do.
Yeah.
And so, it is a codependence. People say some people would say that's unhealthy.
Yeah.
I think that it's not. I think that there is it's like it's a symbiotic relationship. I mean, and when you remove one part of that, they also say if in a marriage you're not growing together, you're growing apart. So if you're growing together, there's that codependency. I think it's a beautiful part of that institution of marriage. So
well, and I really love the aspect of the male-female perspectives, and
totally.
I make fun of myself because I'm the more like outwardly emotional person, because Jenny just kind of keeps it under wraps, and then you make her mad enough, she'll show her emotions.
I'm sure.
Maybe just like us all, but the I have pushed those buttons, not necessarily intentionally trying to escalate, but I've felt the wrath of a woman who's pretty dang mad.
Sure.
But the there's I think we are each other's counterweights, right? Where,
like a check and balance sort of a thing, or
like
compliments.
I'll
You're each other's
hot.
compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll get hot and she'll pull me down. Or maybe I'm getting upset about something at work or the kids, or she'll say something. I'm like, you're right. Okay.
Totally.
And me too. I'll bring something up. Say, hey, have you thought about this? And I think there's an egotistical resistance that we all have to that initial correction, but in the back of our minds, if our partner or spouse is right, they're right. And this
is going to relate to my advice later, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're kind of heading down that road.
There.
And I do believe that there's learning how to coexist with my wife, who's a different person, who's not the same as me, and believe me, one of me's enough. And you know what I mean? Like there's enough intensity coming out of this guy to last a couple lifetimes. Yep. So but she tempers that with a kind of just, all right, the tornado that he is, whenever he comes back down to earth, we'll figure it out, and And I've been successful, and I've had, I've done a lot of things right, but I've done a lot of things wrong too.
Sure.
But I'll tell you what, she is not shy about letting me know when I'm wrong, and I really appreciate that about her. And I think, Jenny and I certainly have had our ups and downs, and we've had our moments. Been married just over 17 years.
If anybody tells you marriage isn't hard, they're lying.
Oh, bro.
It doesn't matter. Good marriage is bad marriage.
Man.
Just doesn't, and that's another bumper sticker. But man, it's the truth.
Sure, absolutely. And I think that, but I also think that, when you have this opportunity that you do, and that's what I think it is, even though it hurts and it's not fun. And
no, but you're right.
There's growth here
totally.
For you. And there's and I think you're approaching it the right way. Hey, I'm gonna kind of go out there and I'm gonna learn about myself by myself.
Yeah, and it is, and that anybody who's had a bad breakup, I mean, will tell you that it's getting over the hump of not being an individual, right? Because a lot of us think of ourselves as individuals when we're in relationships, but then when you're immediately thrust out of it, you're really an individual. And that's why rebound activities are so common because
totally.
they take up that space, they take up that gap that's left behind. So
I'd say that's the negative codependency.
it's this
right?
that's the negative
side.
part of it. Yeah, where you can't exist as an individual, right? And people go a lot further and do a lot worse things than rebound activities too. Like it takes people's lives.
Addiction or whatever. It goes into those sorts
all
of things.
Kinds of stuff. So it didn't really feel like I had a choice, but in hindsight, I recognize I did. I could have stopped showing up for work, and I could have, there's a lot of ways that could have gone. And I think you're right. I'm trying to take the best approach I can. I've screwed up some stuff along the way. We all do. But you're right. I have to see it as an opportunity. This is another bumper sticker, man. We're getting all these in. Embrace change or embrace pain. Those are your two options. You either accept it and you kind of roll with it, you take the opportunity, or you don't accept it and you suffer for it.
I would totally agree with that. Is it Jim Rohn that said the pain or the weight, I can't remember what it was, of discipline is light compared to the pain or the weight of regret.
Sure.
And I think it kind of it corresponds with what you're saying, because you're and Brandon Cohan's a guy I work with at Berkshire. He manages down in the valley for our company, and he said people operate typically from a place of pleasure or pain, right? And
that's an interesting way to think about it.
And I think it goes along with what you're saying, because it is temporarily, and if you kind of wrap all three of those statements together, it is temporarily easier to rebound to whatever,
whatever it is,
right?
Take the short way, the easy way.
Because that is a operation of instant gratification.
Totally.
Right? And
exact word.
And then there's the heavy work, the hard work, the discipline of acknowledging a fault, and that's painful too, but it's like, and I'll use my dad as the perfect example. My dad, who died of COVID pneumonia in 2022, January 31st of 2022, as a matter of fact, coming up on a year anniversary now. Now, when this is released, it'll be beyond that. The reason my dad's body didn't do well is because he made the choice to not deal with the pain of taking care of his body, right? And having the discipline. The discipline, right? And there's pain in that, right? You have literal soreness, right? Because you're out of shape.
Yep.
There's the pain of the ego being bruised, because I used to be able to do 100 push-ups, and now I can't even do one, kind of thing. That's not what his symptoms were, but and it was easier in those moments, and those instant gratification moments. Those are opportunities in and of themselves. And so when Brandon says you operate from a place of pleasure versus a place of pain,
right,
where the rubber meets the road, and where you can kind of tip the needle to the other side, the proverbial needle, right, is the understanding that I need to go through this pain or this challenge, right, because the pain actually it's the work, it's the growth, right?
Yeah.
And through all
You're
of that,
You're paying for that. You're paying for the benefit. That's going to come back to you later.
So much more beneficial, right?
Yep.
And I think just to kind of circle back to what you're saying here, I think you're really taking the right approach, because I have friends that have gotten divorced. When I was out with Darius Rucker, there were guys that were cheating on their wives.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
And that's
instant culture,
gratification, right? And I never did. And to be quite frank, I never had the temptation.
No.
Because Jenny was so important to me, and in that, we all have our places where we procrastinate or we go to instant gratification when we shouldn't. But that one was never worth it.
No.
And
because you can think 3 steps ahead.
Oh,
I
dude,
think that's a lot of
yeah.
the problem is people don't take the time
can't
to think
see-
about the fourth order effects.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, if I do this, I'll feel good for a minute, and that's all I need to think about right now,
Yeah.
That instant gratification. I think this also kind of alludes to what I will talk about later, I mean. Society as a whole, I think, is trending towards this instant gratification culture, and it's kind of seeping in through the cracks everywhere. It's in I'll throw it out, social media. It's in social media like you wouldn't believe. You can
Well,
sit
every
there
time
and
you
just
get on the
scroll
phone,
and
the
scroll and
dopamine.
scroll.
Yeah, it's dopamine.
Well,
Yeah.
and the way that mobile game companies like just work on human psychology to keep you playing and buying stuff and all that. The instant gratification centers of the brain is what they're working on, and it's gotten to this point where you can actually exist functionally without having to experience a lot of pain, because you can just kind of ignore it. And these people end up just living in their parents' basement and consuming a whole lot of electricity, internet, and Doritos. But they but as a practical function, those guys don't have to deal with a lot. There's a place for them in society now that there just wasn't 50 years ago.
Sure.
There was a different work ethic. There was a different pride that kind of people took in their production for a better world and a better society. So you wanted to go work, and you wanted to do something, and you wanted to do something you enjoyed. And nowadays you would really never hear somebody say, "Oh, I was proud to be a manager of an auto factory for 20 years." Back in the day, you get a gold watch and a party, and you're like, you can go home and feel good about yourself because you gave a whole lot back to society. And now, especially I think with people my age and younger, my generation and younger, it's a very selfish and a very instant gratification centric behavioral model, and it's scary.
I think the one thing that not as a rebuttal, but more just because I'm always interested to see why is it such a bad thing if somebody worked at a place for 20 years,
right?
If that was a source of contentment for them,
right?
Then great, and some people would say, well, you undervalued yourself from an experiential perspective or of
like you could have you made this much, just as a really ham-handed way of putting it. You made this much, but you're way smarter. You could have gone and done this and made way more money or had a way bigger house or whatever. Yeah.
But I think that's a very surfacey statement to say, because when you judge somebody that way, I don't think you've really taken into account their why. And
nope.
and it's the when the why is powerful, the how is easy. Joe Capriotti told me that one, and it is like, well, let's hold on. Maybe it was fear. Maybe you're right, but maybe you're wrong, and maybe it's one of those things where somebody just really felt like, hey, I'm content here, and there, somebody, I can't remember this. He's this big buff guy, wears ball cap all the time. He always got the nose strips on. I don't know.
Not like Hulk Hogan or one of those guys.
But he's big dude. He's got a really successful business.
Yeah.
And he said something on social media. I've seen this come up a couple times where he said, like, the top 3 traits of the most successful people were that they never felt like they were good enough. They always felt like they were better than everybody else. And they had an insane ability to delay gratification.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, the first 2 are psychologically concerning, right? Because not happiness, contentment, and of course, going back to the Bible, it's like, what's an idol to you? There's these
idle
emotions.
hands. Yeah. Right.
And so I think it's the idea of the idolatry of money or the idolatry of more, when it really is, you know what?
It is how you define success.
100%.
That's what I was gonna say.
That hits the nail on the head, because you think about people. Why are poor people some of the happiest people in the world?
Yeah, right. Well, I heard a study on, I think it was NPR the other day, that was talking about the longest running study on happiness, and they discovered that basically there's a cap. Like, there's a functional amount of money that you have to kind of be a peer in society, right? Like either own a house or a car or whatever, have some functional ability to act in a financial society.
Right.
But once you get to that point, it's like, I think these days it's like $80,000 or $100,000. But once you get to that point, you could have $1 million or $10 million. You're not going to be any happier because of that. So we've kind of, as a society, ignored and at the same time proven that you don't need money to be successful and you don't need money to be happy.
Correct.
You need some money
Well, sure,
to
yeah,
live.
yeah,
I won't be the
right.
guy who says, oh, money doesn't buy happiness. Well, it's going to buy me a lot of stuff that's going to make me happy. So I get
It'll
that.
buy me a boat.
A boat will make me
a
happy. That
truck to
seems,
pull it.
that's the transitive property, right? We can do math. But it's, if it is, I think that if money is your primary focus as a human being, that actually begets misery. Because,
totally.
like you said, I am never good enough. I am better than everyone else. First of all, can you recognize the dissonance in that?
Totally.
I mean,
totally,
it's kind of like the backward, it's kind of like the reverse version of one of my own personal rules, which is compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not who someone else is today. It's like, that's a Jordan Peterson
nugget.
thing. That's a Jordan Peterson thing. 12 Rules on Life.
I love him.
Yeah, his book 12 Rules for Life. I could probably, they're literally my phone background screen. Every single one of them. That is probably one of the greatest books I have ever read in my adult life. So highly recommend it. 12 Rules for Life.
I need to look.
An antidote to misery, I think is what is the subtitle of the book.
He's freaking brilliant.
He's a smart guy. He thinks about things very pragmatically. You know, he's one of those guys who you can tell has, and this is getting rarer and rarer in today's society, he has a political opinion, but he also is an intellectual who can view an entire issue as a whole.
Right.
And that was why he's got all the YouTube videos and lectures that he does. He's a psychologist, and I'm kind of a nerd for human psychology, try to figure that stuff out, and he's a brilliant guy.
Big fan of his, because he is able to differentiate between his own opinion,
right,
and be challenged on his own opinion, and then defend his opinion,
right.
But I would even bet that because he is so focused on the altruistic correctness and he probably analyzes his own opinion and pokes holes in it before anybody else ever could.
He's probably his own worst critic.
Oh, dude. Well, aren't we all? But like him, the one thing that would be interesting is to listen to that guy's thoughts.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, what a library lives in that guy's head. I mean, the interplay between all the stuff. I mean, he's just a really smart guy. Yeah. He's got a lot going on. The other thing I like about him is he maintains his humanity through the whole thing.
Totally.
He doesn't give off this vibe of like, oh, it's not, I want to say like a Freudian vibe, like, right, oh, this is how things have to be, and I know this, and you guys just have to listen to me, and I'm right. And you're like you said, he's probably poking holes in his own argument, and I think that gives him that sort of credibility of like the asterisk at the end of the statement of, and I could be wrong, or whatever that is in his case.
Well, I think he's even said stuff like that,
all the time.
Yeah. So, before we go too far down the proverbial rabbit trail, because you and I have obviously so many common threads here, we do need to kind of wrap this up. So, getting back to the idea of our little mantra here of or process of making sure that the end of this is a little nugget that somebody can take home. Yep. Although you have delivered a
couple nuggets.
There's been some good ones. Give us if you could give some advice based off some things that we've talked about today. What would that be? So
this is perfect, because when I came in here, you were kind of telling me like, hey, start with like maybe a hardship or an experience, and then we're going to work to a piece of advice from that. I was like, oh, which hardship? And I kind of thought of the piece of advice as maybe attached to the individual hardship. But there is one common thread through kind of everything that I've experienced that I think if I could tell the entire world one thing, it would be to get to a point where you can find value in being wrong. So we've talked about that a lot. You were talking about how Jenny is like, hey, you know, have you thought about it this way? And you're kind of the same check on her. Like, but what you said that kind of led me, that I was going to pick up on later, was there's always an initial twinge of defensiveness.
That's called
right?
ego.
The ego, totally.
Yeah.
There's that twinge of defensiveness that you get, and having a marriage with somebody allows you to be close enough where that's a very small twinge, and you're able to get right over it, and then recognize that this person wants what's best for me, and she's smart, and she gets me, and she knows the situation well enough. She's probably right. I should defer to that, and I'm going to learn something from being wrong. So. Again, I'll just repeat it. We need to get to a place as individuals where we can find the value because it exists, find the value in being wrong.
Man,
Look
dude,
for
that's
it.
a bomb.
Seek
That's
it out.
well, yeah, right. That's that is such a strong thing to do. And spouses, if we're talking about spousal stuff, the only thing that I would add on to that is make sure that you are providing a mechanism in the relationship, and this doesn't have to be spouses, but that's just kind of where we talked about it. It's relationships in general. But make sure that you are providing the space to allow somebody to tell you you're wrong, and you don't like gaslight or behave narcissistically. You have to be able to keep your own ego in check.
Put the mirror on yourself.
And so you are responsible for making an environment where somebody, especially somebody close to you, because if somebody close to you cares enough to correct you, then they're trying to grow you, right?
Yeah, they want you to do. They think that you could be better for yourself. If it's really, that's another one of the rules is make friends with people who want the best for you. So if you're making friends with people who want the best for you, and they're trying to tell you like, hey man, you should really stop doing this or that or the other thing, or you should start doing this or that or the other thing, you shouldn't look at that as well, who are you to tell me? But man, that is such an upfront reaction for people these days. Yeah. No matter what it is, no matter who you're talking to or what you're talking about. Professional interactions, politics with family, anything like that, the first thing is throw up this wall to just be like, nope, my viewpoint, my opinion's right, and I can't be wrong.
Yeah, and people with narcissistic personality disorder can't do that. They can't. But all of us have a little narcissist in there.
Everybody does.
That's your ego, right?
I think it's a societal thing too. Yeah. Like I said, it gets back to that instant gratification culture. Yeah. It breeds like selfish motivations and this sort of internal economy of ideas. And it's a kind of a feedback loop, right? It's making that more prevalent. So that's why I would say, find value in being wrong. Figure out where it is, seek it out, learn from everything, every time that you're wrong, and don't be upset, don't be angry, be happy. Be like, man, I had the opportunity to learn something today. I get to go forward and make the world a better place or be a better person because of what I learned. Yeah, and I think don't be hard on yourself would be the only thing I would add to that. Don't be too hard on yourself. Yeah.
If you're wrong, you're wrong, and sometimes
you're your own worst critic.
Yeah. And Susan Kramer used to say, I can't control my first reaction, right? Because that's my instinct, but I can control my second. And it's that wall. It's like you've got to kind of
break it down
fainting goat it, right? Stay up, because if you fall down, you're toast. Yep. It's that whole idea of just like, what is the ultimate right thing to do? Yeah. The right thing. The right thing. Truly right. Yeah. Absent of the ego, and that's where. Yeah. There's. I think we all have work to do on that. Yeah, dude, totally. This was a great discussion, man. I'm really glad we need to do another podcast just to start going down the Jordan Peterson route. Yeah, or something else. We got a lot of rabbit holes. Yes, we do, and there's going to be a lot of beers partaken in these continued conversations. I think so. Guys, thank you so much for watching and listening to him talk. I got a lot out of this, and I can't wait to get the feedback that you guys have, but we will see you on the next one. Until then, stay well, stay healthy. God bless.